Hello and welcome. My name is Sam Kling, and I serve as a fellow and the director of Global Cities Research at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And today I'm joined by Cleantech sector expert Jean-François Béland, who's the vice president of Ressources Quebec at Invest Quebec, to discuss the rapidly evolving world of batteries, electric vehicles, and their impact on climate, the global economy, and our towns and cities. Jean-François also served in the Office of the Prime Minister of Canada as an advisor on governance policies and the Treasury Board of Canada, and we're honored to have him here today. We'll be doing a deep dive into the opportunities and challenges ahead of what is needed for Quebec to emerge as a powerhouse in the growing global EV revolution. And I want to thank our partners at the Quebec Government Office in Chicago for sponsoring today's conversation. Particularly, I want to extend our gratitude to Martin Dion and Kareth Brand for their support leading up to today's discussion. And before we get started, please note the Council is an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and we take no institutional policy positions. Views expressed in today's conversation are our own and do not represent the views of the Council. Jean-François Béland, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Tom.
So I want to begin by talking about your work and then moving on to its implications at the local scale and then kind of the global geopolitical scale. So Quebec has invested a lot of money, almost $7 billion in its green economy plan. And its goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 37.5% compared to 1990 levels by 2030, and to be carbon neutral by 2050, which is very ambitious. And I'm wondering if you can explain a little, what role does Resource Quebec play in achieving these goals, and where have you made the most headway?
Yeah, so you are right. Quebec has a very audacious policy goal for reducing CO2. We are all aware, it's clear, it's obvious, we have a climate change problem globally. We have problem of air pollution. We have climate change starting to occur at least in some part of the world. So all this being said, Quebec has a clear goal to reduce CO2, what we call the Plan pour une économie verte also, so a green economy plan, clear focus, clear sector, clear policy focus to reduce CO2 and also grow the economy, because fundamentally at the beginning of everything, environment is an economic topic. So linking environment and economy is the goal of this Plan pour une économie verte. And that's where Investissement Quebec, Invest Quebec, has a role. Investment Quebec is essentially the bank of the state of Quebec, the province of Quebec, where we are managing the asset of the government of Quebec. And in parallel, at Ressources Quebec, the division I'm the VP, we manage the investment in the mining sector, in the resource sector, in the energy, battery, hydrogen sector, forestry sector. So that's the reason, that's exactly our raison d'être, our goal at Investment Quebec. The banking side, foreign investment attraction, and in parallel, detailed approach to industrial policy. All in that precise case where we're talking today, putting in place a battery strategy, a battery electrical vehicle strategy.
Yeah, and about electric vehicles, I mean, one thing that strikes me about kind of the unique situation in Quebec is that in most places, electricity generation is one of the biggest contributors of CO2. But in Quebec, you have a lot of renewable energy and a lot of hydroelectric. So how does that shape the strategies that you're developing and also the challenges that you're facing in terms of where the CO2 is actually coming from?
But you're correct. We are fortunate. We're blessed by geography, where there's mountain, where there's hill, and fundamentally there's a lot of hydroelectricity, 37,000 megawatt of clean hydroelectricity at Hydro-Quebec, a Crown corporation owned solely at 100% by the Quebec government. This electricity, base load, free of CO2, a lot of capacity that are used to being a green economy, green electricity. It's used to push forward green economy. Green economy being green aluminum, green electrical battery for the electrical car. And there is, so it's a public policy choice that was made in the 60s and 70s. We are blessed with the hydro. We're also able to export to the northeast of the United States, namely New York and other states around Quebec. So we have decided to use this electricity, of course, to for the baseload for the citizen of Quebec, for the industry of Quebec, but in parallel to grow green economy. And that, in the case of the electrical vehicle, it is a clear mandate, and the goal is to. It could be seen as hypocritical to have a electrical battery in the electrical vehicle, to have a battery that is made with coal or other type of fossil fuel. And that's where it is important and it is fundamental to have a battery that is clean, and to have this type of green battery, we need this green electricity. And that's where we have this focus approach, where we push toward using this electricity to create this full, total integrated hub of the battery hub. From the mining, we have the resource, to the cell, and after you have all the part of the battery pack, and also we are focusing on the recycling to have the full closed loop of the green battery.
Yeah, and when we talked earlier, you mentioned that really one of your goals is to sort of create an entire battery industry from scratch, or to at least create a local supply chain for batteries. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Exactly. From scratch, the scratch being, we have lithium, we have nickel, we have other resource. So from there, the goal is to start from the mining, the resource, having the extraction, having the concentration of these resources, the refining of these resources, and producing the part of the battery, the cathode, the anode, and all there. But it's really a plan that is tailor focused, systematic. That's the other approach. The three big advantage of Quebec on the battery strategy is, first, the green electricity, to the resource, as I discussed, and in parallel to have Investissement Québec, for example, putting a clear, systematic industrial policy approach. We cannot compete in the sense that roughly 70% of the battery value chain is based in China. So we're starting from scratch. We're putting a systematic approach. Okay, lithium, we have Nemaska, we have graphite, we have Nouveau Monde Graphite, we have other parts, we have nickel and Raglan Mine, northern Quebec. So all these parts are being put, and we're putting a systematic approach. We're building one after the other the phase of the industrial value chain, to have a full integrated approach from the mining to the cell. After the integration to the North American market is fundamental. We are not producing electrical battery for the electrical car only for Quebec. It's for the North American market. It's for our friends and neighbor and allied Americans industry, and the rest of Canada, namely in Ontario, where historically the car industry is located in Canada in that case. So the approach was really a complementary approach, where everybody has its place. Everybody is able to be focusing on their strength. For example, Detroit is roughly 15 hours train from Quebec. So it is a type of approach where we are working closely with our friends in the United States and other industrial partner in Canada, but clearly it's a North American market, and we assume this, and we are looking forward to be totally supplying this market. It's the approach, and that's what happened last week when GM POSCO announced on Monday that they were moving forward with a factory, CAM factory in Bécancour, Quebec. Same thing with BASF, a large German conglomerate, announced on Friday, 1 week and a half from now, that they were acquiring a land in Bécancour again to open a factory to supply again parts of the battery supply chain. And again, we just talk of Bécancour. Bécancour is located roughly 150 kilometers from Montreal, the largest city of Quebec. Between Montreal and Quebec, Bécancour, we have focused to put all the industrial capacity one after the other, located in the city of Bécancour. So there's a harbor, there's the rail, everything is focused there. There's the electricity available, and it's really, again, industrial policy. They will all be factory neighbor one after the other. It's really we're going back to Porter industrial hubs approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're alluding to, I mean, both kind of the local manifestations of this industry, but I think maybe first let's dig into kind of the global um, implications. Um, I mean, you talked about kind of the relationship to the U.S. market. Uh, why was it important um, to create a local battery supply chain rather than, continue the reliance on China or, other sources of lithium? And were there geopolitical concerns in the behind the creation of this, or did that kind of just follow?
There is always geopolitical. We forgot, but we're now starting to remember geopolitical problems like what we're living right now in the war in Ukraine. There's always geopolitical in the background of the industrial approach. We saw this with COVID. We saw this in the last few years with the tension, commercial tension with China. The reality is there's a whole policy called l'indépendance économique, l'indépendance énergétique, so energetical independence or economical independence. There is fundamental, so important part of the economy that we as North American cannot put offshore. And that's where working closely with Americans, it's the American government, for example, it is fundamental to integrate this value chain. So there is a geopolitical element. There's no doubt about this, but there's also an element of geography where it is a 10, 12 hours train to carry cell or other part of the battery to the heartland of the United States, when it could be, I don't know, two weeks of shipping, 12,000 kilometers of shipping, trail, rail, name it. So there's a lot of CO2 pollution, and there's supply chains are extremely far. And at the moment where there's a minimal tension or severe tension, as we saw with the COVID or with Ukraine, there is disruption. There is extremely high price fluctuation, and now people are starting to realize that, wait a moment, it's maybe easier, it might be costlier short term to build a supply chain, to have a supply chain in North America, because in North America, as you know, it's obvious we're not the salary of some country in Asia, but in reality, it's so stable, secure, trust the supply chain, and that's now the new approach people are rediscovering. Policymakers are rediscovering. The reality of geopolitics is catching up, and it's we're able to do this type of approach in a liberal market, no problem, in a capitalist economy, but it's really now a fundamental element. And you cannot, in the 21st century, the lithium is essentially becoming a form of new oil, or the nickel is becoming the new oil. It's part of the independence of the power of a country. Remember the 19th century when at one point we were gauging the power of a country with the coal or the steel production. It's a little bit now the same strategy. If you're able to produce electrical vehicle, for example, or battery or critical strategical minerals, it is fundamental, and you will be able to keep your power. The amount of rare earth that you have in your cell phone or in smart weapon in some case, it's so fundamental that you cannot afford importing every resource from far end of the world, and you need to have something close to you from democracy allied next door. That's the fundamental of the geography, geopolitical approach. Yeah.
Have you seen changes in your own work or changes in the conversations that you're having since the Russian invasion of Ukraine? I know there's been talk in the Biden administration and people on TV saying, this should accelerate the transition to EVs, but I wonder if that's reached into your daily work yet.
Yes, yes. People were starting to conceptual the importance of geopolitical matters in the industrial policy. Now it is the center of the decision making. First and as a supply chain approach, and also the consequence on the oil price. You saw the gas going up, so more it's a economical fundamental. More the price is high, more the electrical vehicle is taking place. Less you import oil, and it's so there's a dual approach from the market, from the demand, and from the offer. It's we see it firsthand. Yes.
Very interesting. Um, I want to move on just to talk about kind of how this is going to play out on the ground, or how it already is playing out on the ground. You know, your work gives you a unique vantage point into, I think, how cities and suburban areas and rural areas maybe face different challenges when it comes to EVs and battery electrification. And I'm wondering if you could talk about maybe first with cities. Um, Everyone is predicting that this is going to be a swift and imminent transition. But what kinds of challenges are you seeing on the ground when it comes to developing this infrastructure and getting these vehicles on the road and into people's hands?
Essentially, the city, the fundamental is that the electrical system did not change a lot in the last 100 years plus. The fundamentals are the same. Thomas Edison will see the electrical system. He could see the electrical system right now as it's roughly the same as it was when he was there. That's one of the most important elements. The grid. The grid will be the actual grid won't be the grid we'll have in 10 to 20 years. There's a lot of thinking of what it will be. There's a lot of adaptation we'll have to do. What happened, for example, if you have a condo tower of 60 condos and everybody in a COVID will be far, I hope, at this point in a few years, where everybody will be back from work at 5:30, 6 o'clock. Everybody will be, first of all, if they find the charging station, will be charging at the same time. So the peak of demand that we know right now, when everybody comes home with the showers, the eating, the cooking, will be extremely high with the electrical vehicle arriving on the same grid at the same moment for the same type of demand. So there's a lot of smart grid approach where we will have to think how to, for example, the car's form of software that will delay the charging in the middle of the night where the demand will be lower. That's an approach, but also we'll need a lot of change. Wiring in the street that will need to change because there's a lot of demand coming. If you have a tower with X number of condo, you'll need a lot of change to first to be able to accept this charge. The other element is also you might have thinking that will be different on the charging approach. Instead of waiting, as you have in the United States, Canada, and Quebec, you go to a charging station, you take the wire and you charge your car. That might change. We might have a charging station like in Stockholm, like in Swedish, Scandinavia are roughly 10 years in advance on us. A country like Norway, when you have 75% of the cars sold that are electrical vehicle car, they're of course, they have the mass. They are extremely in advance. But in Scandinavia, for example, you have on every street roughly. There's not one polling station, but there are several all over the place. The city lightning. They all have a form of 220 volt where every car is able to charge, and it's being. So that's the type of thing but the system is not ready in North America to see this demand coming from all over the place. It's a system that is over centralized, based on big, large one unit coal fired or electrical. So that's the main change that will have to occur in the cities. And it will be so quick, so rapid, and it will take a lot of investment. The people are starting to think this type of new approach, but we're late. We don't have the same type of market that like in Norway or Sweden, but it's where we are going. There's no doubt on this.
Do you see mayors as playing a significant role in this, or are they kind of just bystanders, and this is really something that the utilities have to take care of?
Utilities and mayors, but clearly at the local level, it will be fundamental. They will have a key role in decision making on And you'll have a form of competition at one point between cities where, hey, if you want to come and live in my city, we're in advance on X amount of charging station. We're able to provide this. So you'll have this at the local level because it is fundamentally at the local level that this type of decision will be made. With of course, with the state level and the federal level, that will be investing a lot but the decision will be ramping down to the mayorship level and other local decision maker. And after, the state will have to coordinate the approach where you will have, for example, on a highway place, you'll be able to drive with electrical car from one point to the other point
You
with
mean
charging
like
capacity.
induction charging or so, like for your cell phone?
That's part of the thinking we're having right now that people are looking at. It might be 20 years from now. It's quite difficult at the end. But you'll have a charging station on the side and other thing like that. And in parallel, you have the battery revolution, electrical vehicle going on, but there's also the hydrogen revolution coming on for heavy transport, for train, and in 50 years, 30 to 50 years, more 50, but for planes. You'll have right now, in a few years, they will be adding hydrogen to the gas, to the kerosene, and from there you'll have at one point a full hydrogen capacity engine. So that will be a clean heavy transport for ship, plane, and train. So you'll have a dual approach. And in the city, but you'll have fueling station for electrical vehicle all over the place, but you'll have some specific focused fueling station for hydrogen.
Interesting. So you operate at the provincial level, and so you have contact with cities, but also rural areas as well. And so, can you compare the challenges facing rural areas with those that are facing cities? Do you think that cities are better positioned to make these changes more quickly, or the opposite?
But, yes, but eventually the rural area will be able to catch up. It's essentially the density. Right now, we went from the early adopter phase to a start of generation of a lot of electrical vehicle arriving. But when you're in the middle of a village, let's say 300 to 500 inhabitants in the middle of I don't know which rural area, but you need a lot of justification first to have a charging station, and after, what can you do with this? When you have, I don't know, a small car that does 150 kilometers in winter, it's 100. You lose roughly one third, and from there, where can you go? What can you do with this? So that's where in city it's perfect. You're able to move forward rapidly with adoption of electrical vehicle, but in rural it will be slower, and they will be at the end of the adoption phase. And you'll have two type of electrical vehicle market. You'll have small car with small range, and you'll have large, roughly high-end and mid-end car with a long 500 to 700 kilometers range. You don't need if you don't drive 600, 500 kilometers, you don't need a battery. That is remaining the 75% of the cost of a car. So if you're able to save having a car at 100, 150 kilometers, you're okay with this.
Interesting. So this could be something like a phased rollout where you see it maybe in cities or dense suburbs first, and then kind of eventually it might move outwards.
Exactly. Market approach. The private sector will focus where there's customer first.
So, because what you're doing is so ambitious, and it touches on just so many aspects of the challenges and opportunities with EVs. I wonder, how are you coordinating with other levels in the government? How are you working with the national government, with local leaders, with the private sector as well? How do you get them all on the same page? What have been the challenges? What's worked well that?
It's not easy. There's a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of stakeholders. There's a lot of departments. As in the gouvernement in Quebec, there's Hydro-Québec, there's us, Investissement Quebec, there's the Department of Energy, the Department of Industry. we all coordinate with weekly calls. We work hand in hand. It's the team composed from every player together, and in parallel, we have every week, every 2 week, depending, a call with the Feds, the Government of Canada, where they also have ambitious goals for industrial green economy. So we work with them, and it's one of the it's not perfection, but we're working closely and things are moving extremely positively and extremely well. It's not easy. We all know this. It's the premise of everything we're doing right now. There's a lot of demand. There's a lot of tension. There's competition from all around the world. There's a big giant. There's small startup. There's several approach to. Is it the lithium approach? Oh, is it the solid state battery? Is it the that's the type of decision we're making, and it is the why my job is amazing. It's an outstanding job. We are at the cornerstone of making all these decisions and doing a decision that will be fundamental for the next 30 to 50 years of the economy of Quebec and North America. So if tomorrow morning, with, for example, BASF, GM, and others coming, we become the cornerstone of the cathode element of the battery in North America. But this is so fundamental in the new green economy. So we need after that to think about training, university research. We need to put all this together. It's really starting from scratch in industry. It's like Henry Ford at the beginning of the 20th century. So,
Wow,
yeah.
that's
It's not
quite a
easy.
vision.
It's not easy. There's a lot of
Yeah,
different views, interests, different, and we don't know. We don't know. When we'll write the history book in 30 years, 20 years, it will be simple. We will know what happened, but we don't necessarily know what's going on perfectly. We have some assumption. We have strategy thinking, of course, but it is where's the market going? Is it LFP? Is it who has the perfect approach? Is it Tesla or GM or we?
yeah, and it sounds like
That's the
there's
type of
also an economic development strategy as well. That's kind of place based
correct.
in that
Yeah,
you're going into communities and you're really trying to foster an industry that's centered on a town
correct.
or things like that. Um, okay, so I want to return in closing to kind of some of the geopolitical concerns we talked about earlier. Um, in light of your work and in light of the changes that you see, how do you see the global energy picture changing in the next 2 to 3 decades in terms of who the powerhouses are, who's producing things, who matters? How's that going to shift in your ideal version?
But the ideal version and the reality is energy will will be more local, extremely local, decentralized. That's obvious. The time we were, for example, in the power plant, 1,500 megawatt nuclear reactor, large unit. This time is over. You'll have small, extremely small capacity, small unit, all over the place. Of course, green, a lot of green. It will be fundamental for the new energy market. Local with less transportation, less exportation. For example, oil. You won't have large tanker. Some people, for example, on hydrogen, believe that we'll do in North America or in South America hydrogen that will be carrying all over the world, over the seas on large tanker. It might, but that's not fundamentally the future. The future is local production for the local consumption, and that will be the big shift. It's finished the time where energy will come from the Middle East, go to refinery, I don't know, or in the United States and be shipped after. No, it will be a few 100 kilometers maximum. Almost a done deal. Small unit, clean. Yeah, that should be around. I don't think that everybody seems to agree on this type of approach.
Yeah. Um, okay. Parting words. What advice would you give to cities and regional governments and national governments who are looking to accelerate the energy transition. Things that you've learned that you think other people should take into account.
Take decision. Purely, simply take decision. Waiting, consulting is not an option anymore. There have been so many consultation people consulting, doing analysis, reports, and name it. Uh, Politically and at the policy level, and with the major challenge we're having, it's time to take decision. Tough decision, of course, but also small decision. So every small step are good, are welcome, and at every level, everybody needs to take decision. Taking decision is everything except easy.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's the best thing that this advice.
it's an important message. And with that, I want to thank you, Jean-François Béland, for your insights and your expertise. This was a really fascinating conversation. Um, and to our viewers, I want to say if you enjoyed today's conversation, we encourage you to share this video with colleagues or friends or family. And again, I want to thank our partners at the Quebec Government Office in Chicago for supporting today's discussion. Thank you all again for joining us, and we look forward to engaging with you at our next program. And thanks again, Jean-François.
Thank you, Sam.